Welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to talk about why I don't really buy any AAA games anymore, and why you should think twice about buying them. This video is mostly my opinion, so you may disagree with it. There is a false statement roaming YouTube I've seen from a few YouTubers that irks me. It's actually a few different statements, but all the same topic. Why gaming is dying, and video games aren't fun anymore. This is just a paraphrase as to the number of videos that I see, and this can't be further away from the truth. Is gaming actually dying? Are video games still fun? The first question is very objective, based on player count in many games. Anyone who believes gaming is dying is wrong from a logical standpoint. Gaming could not be more alive than it is today. This isn't the 90s or the early 2000s where playing video games was looked down upon. It's widely accepted now more than ever, especially when there are games with literal millions of players. Games aren't fun anymore? This is more subjective and can come down to a few different things. Age could have something to do with it. Maybe we're just too busy anymore to play games all day like we did when we were much younger. And when we get older, our reflexes aren't as good as they were when we were kids and shooters and whatnot. To bring us back, however, to the main point of the video, we live in a world with the unfortunate state that the video game market is in, and I am talking mainly about AAA games. What's the difference between AAA games and indie games? AAA games are made by development studios that have a lot of money, marketing, and people to work on the game. Indie, or independent games, are the complete opposites. Usually a super small team, sometimes just one single person developing the game. They don't have access to tons of money or marketing. I used to buy AAA games frequently many years ago when they were good. The big games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, World of Warcraft, Diablo, and the list just goes on. It is clear, though, that AAA games are not what they used to be. They focus more on trying to milk the player of more and more money, yet offer less and less gameplay. Notice how almost every single big budget multiplayer game has a store with cosmetic bundles that cost a third of the game. Notice how they all have battle passes, which is the unfortunate normal anymore. I personally hate battle passes in games, and will usually avoid purchasing a game if I see that it has one. I sometimes, if a game is free, I don't really mind because you gotta have a way to fund a free game. But when you start putting game changing stuff in it that's not cosmetic, that's where I have the issue. These games also tend to just have less and less to offer overall, along with gameplay that feels overall worse than its last game. Always online seems like the new normal for big budget games, which is honestly one of the worst things they could have ever done. Imagine paying $70 for a game and not being able to play it, even single player, because the servers are down. Do you want an example? I'll give you an example. Payday 3. I was a giant fan of Payday 2. I played that game a lot when it was in its prime, and that game is still popular to this day. Payday 3 I didn't purchase. I never really pre-order games anymore and wait about a week or so after launch to see the reviews, and I am so glad that I did. Based on the reviews, the game has serious issues that should not be present still to this day. Not only this, but they are already releasing DLC to further milk a broken game. Look at the reviews. Look at the player counts. On launch, people couldn't play because it is online only. Look at Payday 2. Look at how many people are playing it to this day compared to Payday 3. It's actually crazy. The game is very live, and everything about it is better than Payday 3. They couldn't even make the game look like a new sequel, as the visuals are almost identical to Payday 2. And this is just, in my opinion, some people might disagree, but to me, when I saw the gameplay trailer, it looked like I was watching a trailer for Payday 2. But once again, that's just my opinion on that. You want another example? It's a game that has a shark as one of the playable characters. Always online, so early access and launch had issues with being able to play. The game itself, as I've heard and seen gameplay of, is just an okay meh looter shooter. The story in AAA is pretty awful anymore as well. When it isn't scummy marketing with microtransactions, it's a bad story, and nobody likes a bad story. We can't have edgy stories anymore, nothing dark, nothing that rides that fine line or walks along that edge. They have to shove inclusion and representation down the player's throat at every possible turn in a story anymore. In a video game, in a fictional setting. There's nothing wrong with having inclusion and representation in games. In fact, I think it's actually a good thing in the long run, but I see it as an issue when it's shoved into the games and then shoved onto the player. These games also must have millennial/Gen Z references and humor into the game. Want examples? Oh, I'll give you examples. Borderlands 3, a game I was so excited to play. I love the older Borderlands games and still play them here and there to this day. They are absolute gems. However, 3 is a completely different story. And I use the word story very lightly, and I'll tell you why. The gameplay itself is clearly an improvement from the others. Weapons, the skill trees, everything gameplay wise is incredible. I loved that part of the game. However, speaking about the story, I have a completely opposite opinion. Other than the gameplay, this was by far the worst game I've ever played when it comes to the story. Probably the worst game ever that I have played, and I played a lot of games over the years. It's the story is terrible. It doesn't make up for the great gameplay that the game has. I love the gameplay, but oh boy. Forced, awful jokes, annoying, increasingly verbose voice lines from obnoxious characters, annoying, forgetful main antagonists. It all leads up to probably the worst ending to a video game I've ever seen. I was halfway through the game when I was so tired of the horrendous story, I had to mute the dialogue and force myself to finish the game to justify the money that I spent on it. I had to skip every cutscene that I could, and once I finished, I uninstalled and never came back and probably never will. I could also mention new Tales from the Borderlands. You guys remember the original Tales from the Borderlands game? It was amazing. I love those Telltale games. Walking Dead, Tales from the Borderlands, those are fantastic games. The new Tales from the Borderlands, though, yikes. You want another example? Sure. Let's talk about Saints Row, the new one that came out, I think, like a year or two ago. I don't even know. One of my favorite franchises. Even though 4 and the 5th game had mixed reception, I actually really love them. When you compare them to the newest Saints Row gameplay-wise, it is literally night and day. And I'm talking about, like, if there were no stars or moon and it was pitch black outside night and star exploding in the sky daytime. That is the difference. I never purchased, so I speak on the gameplay that I've seen along with the reviews. The game simply lacks the gameplay the older games offer. The story is once again awful. It's forced humor, millennial/Gen Z phrase inserts. I know every game after Saints Row 2 is ridiculous and not taken as seriously as the first two games when you think of how the gameplay is, but that's what makes it fun. The story of it is a lot lighter than the second game. It's actually funny. The jokes they tell are funny. The jokes in the new Saints Row are not funny. They are barely jokes. It more so can be compared to seeing a Twitter post. I'll give you one more example because I can go on and on forever about this, and I don't really want to milk this point anymore. Let's talk about Diablo 4. For a AAA game, the story is actually really good. I loved the story in Diablo 4. But when it comes down to the gameplay, it suffers greatly. There are probably hundreds of videos that talk about why Diablo 4 is a disaster and only continues to get worse and worse with each updates, but I'm not going to sit here and do that because I'm not a doomer when it comes to talking about games. I don't like talking about drama and stuff like that. I think Diablo 4 has a chance to turn it around. I truly do. Because before Season 1, the game was actually really good. Everything about it I thought was great, except the endgame, but I'm not really an endgame farmer in ARPGs anyways. But other than the endgame, the gameplay I thought was pretty good. The scaling of the enemies was a little bad. It could use a little bit of work, but it wasn't the end of the world. But I do want to talk about in another video comparing Diablo 3 and why I think that game is a little bit better than Diablo 4, which is definitely a hot take. But I'd rather do that in another video at some point in the future, possibly, if I decide to do it. But once again, Diablo 4 started off strong. It had its issues, but they got ironed out. But once Season 1 came out, the game took a literal nosedive and is crawling up a very muddy hill with each season that comes out. I don't know what's going on with the game. I really hope it gets better because I would like to play it again, but in its current state, I don't plan to touch it. There's plenty of other games out there. I want to insert a small thing in here about GTA. I bought the GTA Remastered Trilogy on day one, and if I were able to get my money back for it, I probably would, but it's not possible anymore. That game has more issues than you can count. There are plenty of videos and reviews that talk about this game that you can take a look at. This actually makes me worry about GTA 6. And I know that GTA 6 is a very hyped game. Maybe not very. What's a better word I can use? Awfully? Exceedingly? Exceptionally? Nope. Extraordinarily. I like that one. GTA 6 is extraordinarily hyped. I mean, it doesn't help that we haven't had another GTA game in the last, 10 or so years? It's been over a decade, I would say. Hopefully, I'm not wrong on that. But in that time, we haven't had a new GTA game. And now that GTA 6 has been revealed, it worries me about how the game will play, how the performance will be, how the story is going to be compared to like GTA 5, which is by far still to this day one of my favorite story games I've played because just the humor in it was awesome. The story, there is not really anything negative I can say about the single player in GTA 5 other than I wish it was longer. And it's a shame that there are no DLC to increase that. So, rambling aside, where am I getting at with this? Look at every single AAA game and ask yourself, why would I buy this? When there are indie games that provide a better experience. Not every AAA game is bad, though. I mean, look at Elden Ring. I never played it, but from the gameplay I've seen, I really want to. Team Fortress 2, Counter-Strike 2, Smite, and even Battlefield 2042. Yeah, Battlefield 2042 had a extremely rocky start. Oh boy, that game, oh man, I saw that when that came out and played the beta. That was bad. But they came back. They fixed the game, and the game's actually very fun now. Does it justify the fact that it was broken at launch? No. I don't think it was even. I don't think it should have been charged at full price at launch of how bad it was, but, this is the state of the world we live in, and that's just how it is. But going back to my main points, many games have battle passes now. Why? It's a trend. Overpriced cosmetic packs? It's a trend. daily content that needs to be done, or you fall behind others because there's always that fear of missing out that people have, once again, it's a trend. So many big budget games just feel too similar to each other and don't respect the players. But why is this still happening and getting worse, though? Remember the horse armor and Skyrim incident? Remember the loot box disaster in Battlefront 2? I would love to go back to that era if it meant games could actually provide the worth that you purchase again. But why? Why is this still happening? It's because people buy it. These big teams rely on people who will spend a lot of money on games along with extra stuff for the games. There are tons of videos talking about this issue, and notice how nothing has changed. People keep buying the games, people keep buying the extra content. Until this changes, it will never change and only get worse. This video is essentially me screaming into a void, along with any other video that you'll find online talking about um, this whole thing going on. AAA games are all starting to cost $70, but not offer content that's worth that price. I don't want to only jab the developers, though, since I don't believe it's entirely their fault. I think it's the people above them. The ones that focus more on dollar signs and appealing to investors. I'm sure there are development teams that don't want a microtransaction mess. They don't want a bad storyline or hopping on all the trends that other big games do, but they have to because the people above say that they do. It's actually sad that I play a few mobile games in my spare time that have a lot more content and substance than a bunch of AAA games. Which brings us full circle to the title once again. Stop buying AAA games on launch. If anything, stop pre-ordering. Wait a few days, wait a week. Don't throw your money away for something that has the potential to be bad. If they end up being good, they have good reviews, then sure, go ahead and purchase it. However, if you want a safer bet with your money, there are tons of indie games to choose from. Look at BattleBit Remastered. Look at Pal World. Pal World is doing amazing on Steam. You got Baldur's Gate 3, Lethal Company, somewhat older games like Stardew Valley and Terraria, and just the list can just go on and on. These games are a fraction of that cost of a AAA game and can provide a boatload of content to play around with. Look, at the end of the day, this is all just an opinion video. This is just how I'm feeling and how I've been over the past few years in terms of my purchases. I'm just primarily talking about why I don't buy AAA games much anymore. You can do whatever you want with your money. I'm not going to stop you. You want to buy that new big budget game? Feel free to. Just remember what games looked like and played like years ago to what they are now. With all this being said, let me know your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.